The 38th parallel, which divides the two Koreas today, was created as a way for compromise, but only for a short period of time. After the fall of the Soviets, the boundary became permanent, leaving North and South Korea to become neighbors. No communication was done, but before the armistice was set into place, a ton of conflict was occurring. Northern Korea followed the way of communist ideals, and the southern counterpart grew apart and acquired aid from the U.S. Before Korea's war began, World War II was taking place. During this time, Korea fell under Imperial Japan control. After the defeat of Japan by the U.S. atomic bomb in 1945, Korea reconstructed itself with a suitable government. This, however, left them in turmoil of conflict, with North siding with the communist nations and the southern counterpart seeking a democratic government. This all had to do with the major political party leader, Kim Il-sung's affiliation with the Stalin of the USSR and Mao of the People's Liberation Army. Considering these factions, compromise did arise. Kim Il-sung's ranking was made possible by the Japanese colonization, whom forced Sung's parents to flee to Manchuria, China in the 1920s. Sung joined a movement to fight the conflicting Japan. Soviets, taking notice, recruited him, farther improving and persuading Sung with communist ideas. Therefore, he became more of an importance. Once Japan had retreated in 1945, Sung had Korea in full mind. With the support of Soviet troops, Korea was established back, and Sung had won the Soviets' trust, making him become North Korea's president in 1948. With this power, Sung provided troop support to People's Liberation Army of China, who were on the communist side against the nationalists. North Korea's ties with China and the Soviets had increased dramatically. Syngman Rhee, on the other hand, had attended a Methodist school where he converted to Christianity and learned English. Also, being Korean, he joined a faction in order to fight back Japan for Korean independence. This led him to be arrested for rebellious acts. After this time, he settled in the U.S., where he earned a PhD in 1910. Afterwards, he returned to Korea. Unfortunately, Japan had colonized Korea during this time, and therefore Rhee returned to the U.S., but this time in Hawaii. In Hawaii, again, he practiced activism. The Japan attacks were unexpected, but it did leave Korea alone from Japan. Korea therefore needed a government that could work. Rhee became involved in the U.S. and had settled the U.S. needed an official to run for the people of Korea, and Rhee worked perfectly with himself being Korean and having the rightist views like America. He took America's offer to become president in 1948, leading a democratic government. However, the re-emerging of Korea did not happen at all. U.S. forces located themselves south of the peninsula and planned to protect it. In 1950, the Korean War commenced, with North Korea having permission from the Stalin to attack with the support of Korea and the Soviets. The Rhee army did withstand at Han River, just south of the capital. As an immediate response, Truman ordered Douglas MacArthur to support the South Koreans. President Truman made MacArthur Commander-in-Chief of the United Nations in June 25, 1950, due to his mass experience taking part of World War II. The UN troops were involved, and the U.S. soldiers made up the majority of the army that will soon attack and reclaim Seoul in the Battle of Incheon and reclaim Seoul. The troops were sent to the south and reclaimed the capital in a successful attack. This therefore led MacArthur in popularity to continue attacking farther up north to Unchan, just above Pyongyang. The Chinese forces responded to this attack, pushing American troops far back in the Battle of Onchong on October 25, 1950. The following year, MacArthur's intentions were against China, this time with the support of the nationalists who fought against communism. Now, it was a battle of dominance between the communists and the U.S., which was a terrible fight with the nuclear capabilities that they had just discovered. President Truman had enough of MacArthur's arrogance and fear of the World War III and fired him on April 15, 1951. This therefore led Matthew Ridgway to take command, who previously was in charge of the 8th Army of Korea. Taking his old role was General James Fleet. May 30th, 1951. Ridgway underwent Operation Piledriver in conquering the Iron Triangle, which was abandoned by the communists. This was risky due to the fact that they were prohibited by May 30th not to proceed and farther past the 38th parallel by the Joint Chief of Staff.
Truman was fed up with the continuation of the war and had George Kennan, the ambassador of the U.S. to the Soviets, be contacted for possible negotiations with the Koreans. They agreed. Sung and General Peng held a meeting at Kaesong of July 8, 1951, in hopes of a negotiation and compromise. During this time, out of the area, Pyongyang was bombed, and apparently United Nations troops had illegally entered the neutral Kaesong area. October 25th, another negotiation was set in Panmunjom, and finally made a decision of having the divisions of the nations be divided by the 38th parallel. This was all well and done, but another deal was set for North Korea to get their air bases back in return, to give the North Korean prisoners of war a choice to return back to North Korea or not. There was no settlement, and it left the Ridgway's choice of bombing the whole city of Pyongyang. The Communist Chinese made an assault on Hill 255, known as the Battle of Porkchop Hill, on July 6, with the retreat of U.S. and United Nations soldiers. This was assumed to be done by Eisenhower to have the Communists have their victory and further improve their relationship, even though conflict did cause compromise. At the very same city of first compromise, Panmunjom was when the armistice was finally set into place, with North and South Korea holding the same number of troops, and the demilitarized zone was created, dividing the nations with emptiness. Rhee's promise of unification was never met, but they were promised $1 billion for the damages of the war and protection from the U.S. The money did not properly fund the Koreans, and they continued to live in poverty while Rhee was still in office. Many Koreans felt it was inferior to them that such corrupt government was held to help cheat the president to win the final fourth term of Rhee. The public had previously wanted parliamentary system to rebuke the authoritarian Rhee held back in 1952. The March of 1960 had students protest against the abomination of winning a fourth time and were killed by police officials in fear. In fear, Rhee departed to Hawaii, and therefore a parliamentary system was set into place. July 29, 1960, Democrats in second popular vote against Rhee's party had won that election. This government quickly disbanded due to mass argument with every part involved, and a third republic came to be with a military force in 1963. The leader was run by Park Chung-hee, and they implemented a system called the 5 Years Plan in order to focus more on the reconstruction and not on a government. The documents were renewed every 5 years, starting with the first three in 1962 through 1976, the first providing mass amounts of production, the second 5-year plan proving to other nations that they could compete in manufacturing, and the third 5-year plan making them focus more on the heavy chemical industrialization and boosted the gross national income to the 1,000. The 5 Years Plan continued in segments towards 1996, still focusing on the manufacturing of many cash products. North Korea stayed on the same with its dictatorship and improved more on South Korea right after the war. North Korea had experienced a great leap forward, or a so-called Industrial Revolution, followed with mainly China in 1958. The focus on the improvement of technology was significant, but the cost was much more, and that had killed over 2 million North Koreans. The US, South Korea, China, and Japan sought out to help bring in tons of food with the not-so-agricultural North Koreans. But it wasn't enough, and North Korea was focused more on their army instead of the public. Only the political Sung had the benefit in creating a workers' party in 1975, which supported his and only power of dictatorship. They also joined the non-aligned movement, which isolated themselves and prohibited communication with other nations for the public not to know. The Korean conflict is now called the Forgotten War, as Ted Clark, a soldier in the U.S. Air Force, said during an interview with Carl Bernard of his thoughts on the Korean War. The war did bring a massive toll in deaths, with the casualties bunching up to 37,000 on the small peninsula, and small instances of negotiation did occur. The compromise of the 38th parallel dividing seems for the best for both nations, who were seeking their governments.